Thank you all for tuning in and watching this. This talk is derived from my current latest book, Emotional Ignorance. I'm talking about how emotions shape the way we perceive the world, because they did. And the origins of this book are quite, in-depth and personal to me. It was written during the lockdown and pandemic. My father contracted COVID in the very first weeks of the pandemic and passed away from it a month later. And I had to endure the emotional fallout from that in isolation. And obviously I had no outlets or outputs and ways to cope other than just writing about it. So this is me exploring my own emotional state, wondering why is this happening to me and therefore others, and why emotions do what they do, where they come from, why they exist as they do. Because emotions and science tend not to go together. But I turned out that's not a good thing, because they are very important and we should be more embracing of them and their influence over us, up to and including the fact that the way we actually perceive the world around us is heavily intertwined with emotions. It's not something we just ignore. They affect our very perception of reality by the senses in multiple ways. So one of the first things I remember encountering was the impact of smell on emotions and memory. My father wore a lot of aftershave. It was his thing. His favorite aftershave was the Jean Paul Gaultier brand, which I picture of there. I have a bottle of it upstairs in my house, and I cannot really wear it because every time I put it on, I'm reminded of him and of the experience I went through more vividly than any other time. And it's a well-known thing that smell is the sense which really evokes a strong emotional reaction, really triggers powerful emotional memories. And the reason for that, or the basis of this, to understand, you have to go back to the dawn of life on Earth, back in the primordial soup, as they call it. If you think about the very first life forms, they were basically just complex bags of chemicals in a complex chemical environment, nothing but chemicals and chemicals interacting. And when life forms like that, what they need to know about is changes in the chemicals around them. And what is that if not smell? The sense, the ability to detect changes in the chemicals of your environment. The smell was the first sense to evolve. But of course, once you can sense something, you're taking in information, you need to be able to save the information or to do something with it. So smell led to sort of a deep connection with memory, the evolution of memory. But to be able to sense something and remember it, you need to also act on it and have some sort of response to it. And that's what emotions are, really, sort of instinctive reactions to things that happen to us. So smell, memory, and emotions evolved sort of in lockstep and dictated the very structure of our brains, which you can still see today. That's why this happens. So if you look at how the basic underlying system of the brain works, for many years, the memory system was believed to be part of the olfactory system, because the part of the brain which deals with smell and part of the brain which deals with memory and emotion are so close together, they look like the same thing in the early days of neuroscience. Now we know they're different, but what this does mean is that whereas other senses like sight and sound, and although we may rely on them more, they are taken in via our eyes and ears, but they are shunted into the memory system via the thalamus, right in the center of the brain, which is like a hub for all information. Smell doesn't have that. Smell has a direct connection to the memory and emotion systems. It's like a VIP pass to an exclusive nightclub. It doesn't have to queue, it just goes straight in. And that's why smell has this power to trigger powerful emotional memories and very vivid ones, but also it sort of dictated the structure, the very structure of our brains and the way they evolved. So all of it's sort of the bedrock of that is smell and memory and emotions, all linked together, and other senses sort of derived from that. So that's at the very start, emotions and senses were clearly influencing each other. Another thing me and my father sort of were different about was music, the ability of sound, certain types of sounds to have an emotional reaction. Now, he loved all sorts of different music. I have more weird tastes. Like I am a very rare Vengaboys apologist, as you can see from this photo here. And to me, they're not just a cheesy 90s dance band from Europe. They are, far more potent. I maintain that they are secret eco campaigners. I think the Vengabus is a metaphor for nuclear fusion, because it's coming and everyone will be happy. When's it going to get here? No one knows. It's just coming. And also boom, 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 I want you in my room. What is that? Well, a call for abundant nuclear power, safe energy to power our homes. But that's by the by. But why do I really have this sort of weird obsession with late 90s cheesy dance band? Because I was a teenager at the time. I was in a very emotional state of mind, and that's when your memories are more lasting. Memories are formed. The emotions have this effect on the memory system, and that's where the music of our teens is usually the music we prefer for the rest of our life, because we have so much more strong emotional reactions to it. But it's not just that. I mean, the music affects us emotionally on multiple levels. There's the instinctive level, the fact that rapid rhythms can motivate us. That's why gym music is so up-tempo, something to do with relating to a heartbeat in the womb, perhaps. We hear the rhythm and we respond to it. Discordant noise or jagged sounds, very reminiscent of predator shrieks and growls and howls, and therefore we react negatively to that. We have a negative emotional reaction at a very fundamental level. But at the more complex levels, like when we hear music when we're in an emotional state, that music we associate with that emotion, and therefore that music becomes or has the ability to invoke that emotion in us. And if we can understand music on a complex cognitive level, like we can see the patterns and the rhythms of it, being able to decipher that and predict it does make us, it triggers a positive emotional reaction. So music affects us emotionally in multiple ways, but it also helps us in a strange roundabout way. And I found that out whilst trying to process my own. Lots of music, like heavy metal, is designed to make you angry, and there's lots of sad music. And objectively, that's weird, because these are emotions we don't like. We would try to avoid becoming angry or becoming sad. They are negative emotions. But then music which triggers these emotions is very popular. What happens is that it's sort of like, you have to accept that these negative emotions, although we try to avoid them, they are fundamentally useful, necessary for our brains to function, to maintain good well-being. Our brain has this full suite of emotional capabilities, and by only using or embracing one aspect of all that, we can become unhealthy or mentally unhealthy. But of course, it causes a bit of a problem, because we need to experience negative emotions to make sure our brains capable of dealing with these things, because the way our brains work, the part of the brain which is responsible for producing emotion is also the part responsible for processing it, for integrating the experience into our mental state and sort of a mental model of how the world works. So you can't process an emotion if you don't experience it. So therefore we have to experience negative emotions in order to work through them and get used to them, which is unhelpful, because we try to avoid experiences which trigger these emotions. That's where music and other art forms that trigger these emotions come in, because they allow us to experience that certain sort of emotion in a safe, risk-free way. So when you listen to a sad song, it's not you haven't got to go through any particular trauma yourself to experience sadness. You are experiencing it vicariously. Heavy metal music, it's not something making you angry. It is the angry music which is triggering that emotion in yourself. And this gives our brain essentially a workout. It allows our brain to activate those emotional processes which are necessary for maintaining good well-being. And our brain sort of recognizes this. It goes, oh, good, now I've experienced this emotion, and I am better able to handle my own sadness or anger. And therefore, going forward, you're in a better place. You're more capable of dealing with these emotions. As many studies have shown, people who are fans of heavy metal tend to be the least angry people, because their brains are always being worked out, and their ability to process and handle anger is better than the average person's, because they have more experience of that. Same with sadness. So embracing negative emotions via art forms is, like music, is a very helpful thing. And color of emotions, a lot of emotions have a color associated with them. When we say things like red with anger, or green with envy, but also it's hard to deny that despite them just being photons of different wavelengths hitting our retinas, colors do have a certain emotional quality for us humans. Like red is often associated with danger. That's why stop signs are always red. They make us alert, and we're attracted to them. Whereas greens and blues are quite calming. Hence you have medical smocks and outfits, uniforms that are always that sort of color. You never get a hospital worker covered in red unless the surgery has gone spectacularly badly. And clashing colors can be quite unpleasant to look at, as the example I put down there. They are, they shouldn't be. It's just like just different wavelengths of light, but they trigger an emotional response in us. And therefore, colors and emotions do seem to have a fundamental neurological link. But if you look into the actual science of it, it goes even deeper than that. That, it's not just that certain emotions are linked to certain colors. It seems to be, according to some evidence, that emotions are the reasons we can see colors at all. And to understand that, you have to look at the fact that primates, including humans, all have bald faces, which is not the norm in the mammal kingdom. Most hairy mammals have hair covering their entire body. Why would primates be the exception to this? Because primates, and particularly humans, are very good at communicating their emotions. We have the most elaborate facial expressions to do this. The primary source of emotional information from other species mates is the face in primates. But you don't need a bald face for that, because obviously the facial features can move around. You can see that fine. But what happens when you have no hair in your face is that you can see the color change in the skin of the face when an emotional response happens. Like I said, when someone turns a bit green, it suggests they are disgusted or unwell. If they turn red, they are aroused, which could be anger, excitement, or anything like that. If they are, their face goes white, they are afraid of something because the blood has been shunted elsewhere for the fight or flight response. And that information is apparently very useful, because not just the facial expressions, the color we've evolved to recognize in our species mates' faces when emotions trigger a certain color change when they undergo an emotional state. And human color vision is particularly sensitive to a certain range of colors. And that range appears to correspond almost exactly with the range of colors that manifests in the skin of our face when we are experiencing a certain range of emotions. So basically our eyesight, our ability to see color, evolved to better recognize the colors of someone's face when they are experiencing a certain emotion. So the ability to detect emotions was the thing that drove the evolution of our perception of color. Therefore, emotions are the reason we can see the colors we do. And therefore, colors and emotions have a deep, 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 very fundamental link. And that's just three very profound ways in which emotions have affected and dictated the way we actually perceive the world and the very structure of our brains. So ignoring them or suppressing them is probably not the best approach. So as I say, that's all. You can read all that in the book, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening.